On today's episode of The Hero's Blueprint, we've got someone who's made a massive impact in the world of mindfulness and personal growth. He's a mindfulness expert, author, and podcast host who has been teaching people how to live more optimistic, mindful, and authentic lives for over 15 years. From being featured on the Today Show, Forbes, and Good Morning America to reaching millions, he has mastered the art of making mindfulness relatable, real, and raw. His books, The Opposite of Settling and That's Bold View, break down how to live life without losing your spark and how to reclaim your most authentic, unapologetic self. Today, he's here to share the mindset shifts that have transformed his life and how you can apply them to yours. Please welcome the handsome and authentic, the wise and kind-hearted Case Kenny. How you doing, Case?
Oh, thank you, man. What a kind intro. Nailed it. Good to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Your story just said it. But I'm excited to dive in here, but I want to actually ask you, because everything I just said in the intro, it's always really interesting to me. What got you to this point of where you're at? What was life like before the podcast, before the first book, before you started really diving into mindfulness? What did life look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty normal by most accounts. I mean, I went to college, graduated, worked in advertising for a long time, worked in advertising sales for about 11 years. I think it was, amidst that, and I was good at it. I was good at advertising. I really liked, being a leader and a regional vice president and, making money. I, at a certain point was drawn to the inner work, and I started the podcast really just as a challenge to myself, to know myself, because I think Case in his 20s was, normal dude, but I didn't feel connected to myself. I felt like the blueprint was so clear in my career. Do this, you'll get promoted, continue, blah, blah, blah. But everything else, I just felt like I was borrowing and rushing and just very unsure of myself. And I didn't like that fact because I'm a pretty type A person. I was like, how could I be so sure here, but so unsure here? And then more existentially, I was like, man, I feel like I don't really even know myself. The fact that I'm just following the blueprint in the career and following other people's expectations in every other aspect of life. I was like, I don't like that fact very much. So how can I make it so I'm the same person? And so I started the podcast literally just as a challenge to myself to know myself, and the rest is history from there. I'd been writing online before that also as a kind of attempt to know myself and kind of share what I've learned, but something about podcasting, as you might realize, that it's just a more vulnerable, real format. It really just forces you to really get pretty objective and vulnerable about your life. And, that was 7 years ago on the pod and 700 episodes ago and, many books and everything ago, but really just it made me realize what I was doing, which was mindfulness, which was introspection, and that of course is a muscle. So the more I did it, the better I got at it, and very much reinvented myself several times over since then. But yeah, it really just it started with that urge, that aspect to know myself, because I didn't know myself. So yeah, that's the 2-minute version.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people who just heard that and can relate, because, I mean, so many people find themselves in jobs or just places in lives. I think it's really interesting because I think it happens a lot in 20s that people kind of start questioning, what is my purpose? Really kind of what am I here for? And has the blueprint that I thought I was going to be living in life, maybe it hasn't gone the way they thought. That was the case for me. I had a whole plan laid out in life, and life had different plans for me. So had to completely reinvent myself in that regard. I'm curious though, what actually motivated you to take that first initial leap to step one of starting the podcast? Because there's a lot of people who they have those questions, they have that uncertainty, but they don't know how to take step one.
Well, I think I realized, as you do later in life, I suppose, that you can't really think your way into clarity. You can get some good ideas, of course. The closest you could do is you could talk your way into clarity, maybe. Objectively, though, the best thing you could do is you can action your way into clarity. So that was my step process. I was like, I've done a lot of thinking. I haven't really gotten that far. I need something more catalyzing. And for me, I always come from a creative background, and I always tend to be drawn toward creative things, arts, languages, music, things like that. So it's maybe if I combine the power of wanting to talk and be vulnerable with something that requires a bit more outward expression and less filtering, that would help. And it did. And then it led to the final thing, which is massive action, quitting my career, kind of reevaluating relationships and who I am, and all the good things. So yeah, I think it was a pretty, logical step. And then also, I will say, I think everyone should do sales at some point in your life. It makes you a good type of accountable and type A. And I had done so many difficult things in sales and just had grown from zero. And I was like, I was ready for the challenge of doing something, knowing it would be, potentially odd for some people to see me doing it, or it would require me to start from zero, or it would require me to be a beginner again. Things we're all averse to, but I was kind of ready for the challenge because I knew that that's what was required of me. So that, and then also I was like, if I'm going to do it, I am not going to give myself a way out. Like, particularly in podcasting, it's a difficult thing to grow and make a living from. So I was like, I'm going to do at least 50 episodes before I decide whether or not I'm going to continue doing it. So, and then by the time I got to 50, like, it was doing really, really well. So I think all those things combined, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing because it comes from my heart. I also have a practical measure of what it takes. I also am hopeful of what it will lead to, clarity and then action. And it did all those things. So yeah, I'd say in retrospect, it was a pretty freaking good decision.
I would agree too. I try and tell a lot of people nowadays who are thinking about podcasting, but they think they're too late. You know, there's a couple of benefits that you just mentioned there. The authenticity aspect of it. Once you start a podcast, it really kind of can reveal to yourself, like, are you living authentically to who you are? And what I mean by that is when, like, we're on this conversation right now, we're just being real with each other. It really puts in a perspective for yourself, like, are how you showing up in the world, how, like, is that really you?
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things. Like, podcasting for me has really helped me grow into myself and learned what I want, what I like, stuff like that. But also something that a lot of people forget about is the relationship aspect of it. Is like you can't think your way out of, issues by yourself. And when you build relationships, then you get the opportunity to ask people for help. You get the opportunity to ask people questions, to learn, to
Yeah.
get mentored by other people, and it expands all the opportunities available. And that's I just want people to, like, realize that right there. Is,
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, there's a very practical reason to do a podcast, even if you aren't like pulled towards it for like a soulful reason. Like, it does help you know yourself practically, which is self-awareness, which everyone could benefit from. But two, like, yeah, I mean, if you're looking to build a network, and I don't really do guests on my pod, so I'm a little bit reverso world there. But like, if you're looking to build your network, you just have guests on there. It's an immediate way to connect with people. It's an immediate way to grow your professional, spiritual friend realm. So yeah, I think it's a great medium as far as creative outlets go.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. All right, so I want to dive into the book now, and you talk about settling up instead of settling down. What the heck does that really mean, and how are you embodying that in your life right now?
Yeah, so the whole book started when I just kept hearing people say, like, I want to settle down in life, specifically within love, right? And I was like, yeah, I understand the idea. Like, I understand what you're saying. Like, you don't want to date around. You're tired of that, and you want commitment and you want to have a life with someone. I understand that. But I'm a big words guy, and I'm a big language guy, and I'm a big subconscious energy of language guy. And I was just like, man, if we are telling ourselves that we want to settle down, I just think that's just like such a bad way to think about the power of a relationship. Like, the purpose of a relationship is not to help me get less out of life or more boring out of life or to become stagnant. Like, the purpose of a partner is to amplify your happiness and bring more into your life, because you have this person who will support your crazy wild ambitions. You have this person who won't laugh at you. You have this person who will support you. That should, in my world, mean you get absolutely more out of life. So to say that settling down is the goal, to me, it has really baffled me from just like something we say without thinking about it. And I was like, well, no, it can't. The goal can't be to settle down. It should be to settle up. And the idea of settling up is that you are a whole individual person on your own who have found yourself, your self-awareness, and your joy. And then you find someone else who's done the same, and you come together and you amplify. It is a reversal of the idea of like two halves coming together. It's also a reversal of the idea of, like, you hear it so often as well, that you want to build a life with someone. Again, practically true. You are building a legacy and a house and dual incomes and all these great things. But again, the language hurts me. It's like, if you are waiting for a partner to finally build a life of your dreams, what does that mean you're doing in the meantime? So I think the better language is you find a partner to do life together, because you've already built your best, most joyful, ambitious self. They've done the same. You come together and you just do shit together and you amplify and you bring it all together. So intrinsically, the book's about the concept of settling up. But more so, it's really just a book about like optimism. In the sense of, I read this study a while ago in Harvard Business Review that was talking about professional optimism, not even life or romantic optimism. And it was basically talking about how the social researchers divided these employees into two groups. The first group was like cynical people who had the traditional, you've got to step over some people to make it in life. Like everyone's out to get you, like watch your back. Like you've got to be a hard, cold hustler to make it in this world. Then they had another group who was just more of the optimistic, trusting group. Like if someone said they do something, they trusted it, they believed that they could all succeed. And they followed these people through their career. And overwhelmingly so, the more trusting, optimistic group was promoted more, made significantly more money, and overall indicated a higher level of positivity and happiness in their life. And I was like, if that's true in your career, making trust your default towards other people, towards yourself, just belief and hope and optimism, the same needs to be true in every other aspect of life, especially in love, which is such a draining negative topic. So yeah, I basically wrote the book about the idea of settling up, which is an optimistic view of love, its purpose, and how it's supposed to give you more in life in the face of so many, dating horror stories and our own personal experiences that have made us think that maybe it's not possible. So I just want to help people be more optimistic there.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I'm curious, what's like the biggest lie that people believe about love that caused them to settle in relationships? If you had to say one.
Well, I would say closely related is the idea of independence, that a relationship robs you of your independence. I think for me, classic due to my 20s, I thought that was very true. Um, as a guy, but regardless of your gender orientation, I think a lot of times people think that a relationship is just the uniting of two and it's becoming of one and it's we, not me. And yes, of course that is true, but the right relationship, and it's chapter 1 of the book, should make you more independent. Literally, it should make you more independent. It's like it borrows on a couple of the ideas of, like, the first one is called the dependency paradox, which is this idea in childhood and adolescence and child rearing that the more a child trusts their caregiver, the more independent they're willing to be, because they know their caregiver's got their back. Then they know that they could take a step, fall flat, and they'll be fine because they've got love and they've got this person. And, there's a slippery slope there when it comes to like codependency. But the idea always struck me. I was like, well, shouldn't that be the same of a relationship? That if you guys got each other, if you have each other's back, you understand each other, then you should be more than willing to be independent, literally and emotionally and spiritually. And I think the assumption that a relationship just strips you of your own goals, your own aspirations, and it makes you boring, I just think is such a bad sales pitch for love, but so many people bought into it. So I think that's the biggest one. And I think just flipping the switch there and viewing a relationship and its health and its compatibility through the lens of how willing does it make you to be independent? How independent do you feel? It's a good way to look at it. So that was literally chapter 1.
Yeah. Why do you think so many people are willing to give up their independence going into a relationship?
Fear of being alone. I mean, and not bad people for doing that, of course. There's a lot to be unpacked with your therapist around why that's the case, especially if you were younger and, you had love given and taken away and earned and then thrown back in your face. And you think that is love. And then, in the in the present, that certainly subsists and drives your choice in partners. But I mean, I think in general, like the simplest answer is like we're afraid of being alone. Well, we think that the value of life is our partnership status, which of course love is a beautiful intrinsic, if not number one purpose of life, but it's that timing aspect that gets in our head, and we don't want to throw away something good. We don't want to regret throwing away the wrong partner. I think we get in our heads a lot too about like the term soulmate, or like people on TikTok throw around twin flames, right? This idea that there's this one person out there and you need it. And then in our heads, we're like, oh yeah, vibe for sure. And then we find someone and we convince ourselves that they are a soulmate, and then we stick it out because we've convinced ourselves of that. So I think there's something to be said about, and I talk about it in the book, perhaps redefining a soulmate. So you don't choose love out of fear or out of relief. Like humans, we're wired to seek out experiences and people that offer us relief. Relief cannot be the motivation for getting in a relationship. That's a downward emotion. That is a, whew, I'm glad I don't have to be alone right now. such a understandable thing to do, but the wrong one. And yeah, so I think yeah, that fear is a doozy.
Yeah, I think there's so many people living with that mindset right now too of like I can't wait to get in a relationship so like life can kind of slow down
Yeah.
and things can kind of just settle. And I think what you're saying is such a mindset shift for so many people because whether it be their own personal experiences or how they've previous relationships, I think a lot of people's definition of love is very hurtful and very restrictive instead of expansive for themselves. So I'm curious for somebody who has had a lot of bad experiences with be growing up or with a partner with love, how would you help them to, or what would you recommend them to do to kind of redefine what love actually means to them?
Mm,
What should they be looking for?
yeah, that's a good one. When I talk in the book, it's like there's two ideas with love, right? The first, the one that we mostly gravitate around is like love is a feeling, right? You feel in love. And I agree, there certainly is a feeling, but it's not so much like how the experience of love makes you feel. It's what are their actions that they do that make you feel that way. And look at the actions and define the actions that make you feel that way. And more importantly, like find like the one big way that you want to feel in a relationship. I think the challenge sometimes is we see the trees instead of the forest because we're like, I want a perfect partner. It's funny too. I talk to a lot of single people and I ask them, I say, oh, tell me a little bit about your ideal partner. They can rattle that shit off. It's impressive. It's great. This and that, and they're left-handed and they're this. And I'm like, oh, it's amazing. It's so great that you can list out all the qualities, specific or not, that you want in a partner. Reality is, however, you're never going to find all those in one person. And I'm an optimist. I truly am delusionally optimistic, but you're never going to find those all in one partner. What you can find, though, is a couple of those things, but above all of them, you could find the way that they make you feel. The one most powerful way. I always say that it's like perfect love is an imperfect person making you feel a perfect way. And that way is up to you to define. It could be a combination of like feeling understood or supported or, cliche things, but very, very important. So I think it's really important that we put our finger on that instead of all the little individual things. More so than that, though, speaking of individual things, we have to realize that love is not just a feeling, it is a choice. So what are the choices that someone would make that make you feel in love with them? In the same way, what are the choices you make that you use to express your love? We look at the choices and then the feeling, not so much the other way around. Because if we're only looking at the feeling, there's going to be some days where you don't feel in love, right? And if we only look there, we're going to get really confused. So what are the choices being made? Is it time commitment? Is it understanding? Is it, communication? Like I think really looking at those things is really going to help you. And then being specific there. Again, I think we get in our heads with too lofty of definitions. And yeah, you look at the things that you give and you offer, see what they give and they offer, and see how that makes you feel, and then go from there.
Hmm. I also want to ask about because I know a lot of people get in relationships with this kind of hope. We touched upon it a little bit at the beginning, but almost with like the sense of they're hoping that when they get in a relationship, their life will like that partner will almost kind of like fix them, or their life will immediately just become better. And maybe they keep getting let down because they're just constantly hoping that their partner is going to fix them. And I'm curious, what would you tell someone who is entering a relationship with that kind of mindset of that they're just hoping that someone can kind of save them, someone can kind of fix them?
Yeah, I understand it, is what I would say. But like the silly analogy I give in the book is like the best kind of love is like you finding an extra fry at the bottom of a bag. Like you've already had the meal and you're satisfied, but that extra fry is real nice. It's a great way to cap off the meal. That should be the mentality. And that might sound a little savage, but it's like you need to know yourself and you need to have a sense of self. Otherwise, it's just going to be confusion, and it's going to be this push and pull of two people who really aren't yet at peace with themselves, and that's confusing. And of course, you don't need to be 100% good to go type person. You just need to have that drive and that desire to figure it out for yourself, and then your partner comes along. There's even something, so like we have this concept in, I don't know, self-development, call it, of your ideal self, right? It's the version of you that you self-actualize into being your best self, right? There's a lot to be said about like how much we can create our best selves. I think we can create about 98% of our best selves. We standalone, independent, can self-actualize our best self. But there's something to be said about that remaining percent that only perhaps someone else can draw out of you. And that's tremendous value. In the book, I talk about this thing called the Michelangelo phenomenon. Michelangelo, the David, the statue, the artist, basically the visual idea that the right partner helps you chisel away a little bit more of that marble to reveal your final David true ideal form. And just like think about like that practically. Like let's say like Case Kenny, my ideal form is charismatic and outgoing. And sometimes I struggle with that on my own. I get in my head, I have imposter syndrome. But then I come along and my girlfriend just pushes me a little bit. We're at a party and she's like, Case, tell that funny joke. And I tell the joke. And then I step a little bit more into my best self. That is the idea of someone coming along and really inviting you to the next level of your life. And you do the same for them. Self-actualization there, Michelangelo effect there. I think it's a beautiful way to think about just like a little bit more of your journey. Like you've gotten it to the finish line and they bring a little bit more. That's the beauty of growth together. And I think about it that way as opposed to like you get 20% and then they just like make life easier and simpler and, clear for you, I think is a bit unfair to yourself. So think about it in that respect.
I love that right there, because even outside of a relationship sense, when you're around people that want to see you at your best and they can help chisel away and reveal the parts of you that you didn't even really kind of know were there, make you better, it's so powerful. But I know that step one right there is something a lot of people struggle with, which is actually stepping into their authentic, weird self. And a lot of people don't like to even acknowledge, who are they truly, and they're scared and they're fearful of, are other people going to accept them? So I'm curious, when people are trying to, even before they get in a relationship, when people are just trying to build up their own self-identity and their own sense of self, how do you recommend somebody to kind of start to go inward and really like accept who they are and kind of be okay with expressing that?
I would say three things. I would actually recommend you start outward because our aversion to going inward comes from outward judgment or fear or comparison, the whole thing. There's two things I would throw out as simply as possible without going into the details. The first, and I talk about it in the book, is called the liking gap. Overwhelmingly so, we're more likable than we think we are. Research and social scientists have proven this time and time again. Overwhelmingly, if you were to meet someone and you were to think they might not like you, more than likely they do like you. And if they were to be interviewed, they would say that. They might not know you and they might not love you, but overwhelmingly so, people like us more than we think. We're way in our heads about it. Two, in general, and again, this is also proven, and I reference studies in the book, people prefer nonconformists. People prefer weird people. There's nuance there, right? We're not talking about like intentionally weird and like weird. We're talking about people with passions, quirks, intensities, proclivities that we get self-conscious about. Overwhelmingly so, when men look at women and women look at men, there is an inclination for people preferring non-conformist traits over normalcy. So start there. I think it's a powerful observation in the face of our first aversion to going inward, which is what's the point? Because whatever I find there, if it's weird, I need to dismiss it because people will think I'm weird or people won't like me. That's point one. Point two, and like my whole thing with the mindfulness is like the journey inward is two things. It's sitting and understanding yourself, like, and there's a lot to be said about mindful practice to help you go inward, but that's only step one. And I think a lot of people skip that, right? So you'll meditate, you'll journal, you'll be like, oh man, cool, I'm in my feelings, I'm really feeling it. Amazing. Surrender to it, feel it, accept it. Step two, though, is what do you do with that? How do you specifically speak to yourself about it? We're in this renaissance of wellness right now where there's so many different ways that people are encouraged to go inward. But how do you talk to yourself about what you find? So the biggest thing that I encourage people to do is increase your emotional vocabulary. Like, how do you speak to yourself about feeling lost or lonely or anxious or awkward or misunderstood? Literally, you uncover that through therapy or meditation or breath work or just, sitting in silence. How do you speak to yourself about it? How you speak to yourself creates your reality. Like, truly, like, think about how you relate to emotions. Think about how you relate to people. Think about how you relate to what happens. It's only real based on the words you use. And more than likely, we're using the wrong words. And there's a lot of therapeutic approaches to understanding yourself, self and parts and all these things that I won't necessarily go into, but I would just really encourage people to think about the words that they use. Like if we sit and we're like, man, am I anxious? I'd really challenge you to say, is anxious the right word? I think anxious is the forest, and we need to get the trees. It's okay. You might feel anxious, but what is causing the anxiousness? It's you're feeling left out. You're feeling overwhelmed. You feel like you have too long of a to-do list. You feel like you're falling behind. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we can action on that, as opposed to labeling these blank high-level emotions. So listen to yourself, focus on talking to yourself, and use that to propel yourself forward.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful right there because a lot of people will try changing their future, but they're using past results to dictate that. So for example, if their self-talk has been very negative and they're trying to make positive change in life, it's very hard to do that if your vocabulary and your self-talk, your day-to-day isn't actually changing in according with who you want to become.
Yeah.
So
Amen.
again, I also encourage everyone to, ask yourself, is the self-talk and how you're feeling about yourself in alignment with where you want to go? Because I have been caught in that cycle so many times of trying to make change, but I'm changing outwards, but I'm not changing inward.
Yeah.
And then so then when I'm actually doing the change outward, because I'm not in alignment inward with what I'm actually trying to do, it actually creates so much friction and frustration.
Yeah. I think that's great, man, because I'm not a huge like manifest abundance spiritual frequency guy, but like the idea of manifesting to me is very clear, and it comes from exactly what you just said. It's the idea that if you say you want something, namely I want a healthy relationship, but inside you're telling yourself that every man, for instance, is a liar, everyone will disappoint you, those two things can't be true at the same time. The law of the universe, logic, whatever you want to call it, cannot allow those things to be true at the same time. And the thing is, to your point, so many people focus on like what they want, and they've got great clarity around it, and it's so powerful. But what they tell themselves doesn't align with it. How do you expect to tell yourself one thing if I tell myself all women are crazy, I'm never gonna find someone who supports me, and yet then I'm going on dates or something? Those two things can't be true at the same time. Those are at odds with each other. So those two things you have to bridge that gap, and you know. I don't know perhaps why the universe responds, but it does certainly. And I think it's a powerful place to start inward.
Yeah, I want to give an example personally of something that, it actually impacted my life. So when I was in I think it was like fifth grade, I gave a presentation in class, just normal presentation in class, and I bombed it, right? And I actually, 30 seconds into it, I had to go sit down because I just messed every word, but I messed everything up.
Yeah.
And ever since that point, I always had this subconscious belief that, okay, I could never do presentation. I can never public speak. I can never actually do that. And up until a couple of years ago, when I got really deep with myself, I was like, what is the truth to this? Is it just that one experience? Because I was living with that belief without questioning it for so long. So then what I did is I found a public speaking club in my town, and I said, I'm just going to go there. And I was terrified. I was so my brain was telling me, do not go do this. You can't do this. Like, it's not going to work out. I showed up at that place. I got up in front of that podium for a minute, super anxious, super scared, and I did it. And then ever since then, my belief system about what I can actually do in that regard of public speaking completely changed. And that is change that situation for anything, whether it be about relationships. Are the things that you're basing your life off of actually true, or is it based off of one experience?
Oh,
because,
bro,
man,
so good.
You need to take that time to really ask that, write that down, because I cannot tell you how many of my thoughts and my own beliefs about life were influenced off of other people or one experience, and I was living in according to them.
Yeah, that's so good, dude. I really like that for two things. I would say to go off of what you just said, it is crazy how many people and ourselves, because we're human, we project to the future based off of one experience, two experiences, even 10 bad dates. And we say all people are like this. It is a wild leap in logic. And I understand that, right? Because certain of those experiences go really deep emotionally and we give it so much weight than we need to. But like I talk in the book about it, about like, if I was like, what's the point? If you don't think it's possible, then why are you even trying? So we have to reconcile that, and we have to realize that like like statistical significance, like you don't have enough data to support an insane conclusion like that. And then two, like I similarly relate to public speaking as well. I used to get really nervous, and I would tell myself that I'm nervous, and the better reality that I now found myself in, and I do a lot of public speaking, is I'll feel nervous and I'll honor that. I'm not going to try to toxic ignore it, but I tell myself, I say, a part of me feels nervous, but the reality is I'm just really excited. I move the emotion to something that is equally as true, but doesn't hold me in place. So back to what I was saying earlier about your emotional vocabulary, like a lot of the way we speak to ourselves um, needs to honor the feeling, but we can escape it and we can move past it. And so for me now, anytime I feel nervous, I say, all right, I feel a little nervous. A part of me feels nervous, but I'm excited. And then I move into that new emotion that helps me kind of deliver from it. So yeah, I love that, man. I'm glad you, you lead by example with what you did there. That's powerful.
Yeah, thank you, man. And it's also powerful what you just said about the awareness and honoring that, because it also is a good indication of if I'm up on the podium and I'm nervous, it also is right. It's also me knowing that, okay, I'm fully focused on me right now, but I'm here speaking to these people. I'm here for them. And so
Yeah.
it also gives me recognition that, hey, wait, all of my attention is on me, which means I'm not actually here for the right reason. I'm here because I'm trying to offer value and service to these people in front of me. So
That's good.
because of that initial awareness right there, it allows me to reframe my mind like, okay, you know what? I don't care. I can pass out up here, whatever.
Yeah.
What matters most is that I'm up here for them.
Yeah.
And so let's do my best at this. And it takes the pressure off me. So I like what you said, because you can honor your nervousness, but also, maybe the light is not shining on the right spot. Maybe that awareness can give you some indication of, hey, are you focused on the right thing or the wrong thing?
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about, there's probably people who are listening to this right now and they're like, okay, all this sounds good, but I'm like 40, 50 years old. And, like the timeline of my life of making this change, it just doesn't seem like it's in alignment. Like they're just so stuck on where they're supposed to be at in life, and where they're at right now is they maybe just feel disempowered. How can someone start to release that kind of pressure to be at a certain point in life or love by a certain age?
Well, again, I understand. And the simple answer is you just stop doing it, but that's difficult. So I would say, I mean, the reason that we feel so stuck and so pressure is, I don't know. I think a lot about that in the sense of like, we're really good at identifying what we want and picturing it and visualizing it. But we also have this weird inclination to think that like the life we want and the life we deserve and the life we want to be able to look back upon and say, I had it, so I don't have regrets, is one where we have everything we want, but all at once. And I think it's just not true, unfortunately. I wish you could have everything you want at once, and sometimes you do. But the more freeing reality is to recognize that, yeah, I absolutely think you can have everything you want and you're working towards in life, but you might not have it all at once. You might have the fittest, healthiest, chapter of your life with six-pack abs, but you're single at that point. Or you might come into a lot of financial success, but your friendships aren't really as fulfilling. Or you might travel the world, but you don't have a partner or something like that. Those are all amazing, fulfilling things that you deserve, but they might not all coincide at the same time. That doesn't mean you had less of a life. Like, life is chapters, and I hope they all coincide at once, but they might not, and that doesn't make it any less good or worthy. And I don't know, I think that's an optimistic but also somewhat realistic view of life, and I think looking at it that way allows for you to think about, okay, that thing that I feel I'm stuck in my life, I'm just going to look at that one thing, right? I'm not going to put this pressure to be like, oh my gosh, it's the job and the partner and the body and the health and the fulfillment and the money. It's, let's just one by one, baby steps. And I think that really helps, because we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have it all figured out. I had a chapter in my new book where I talked about, you don't have to figure it all out right now. Your only job is to figure out right now. And I don't know, it just grounds us, right? It's like, in this moment, what makes me feel alive and grounded? What makes me feel most like myself? I think if you're asking yourself that at all times, eventually you're going to figure it out. But you are under no obligation, and it is so unfair to you to think you have to figure out every single thing right now, and to have every single thing you want right now. So it's a bit of a letting go that I think is the answer to your question. It's a little bit of like unbecoming, because we're so quick to, I need a 10x and 20x and bigger.
I think a lot of people also get stuck in this mindset of like, you can't teach a old dog new tricks. And so when somebody's in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and because of this perception of, hey, I need to be at this point by my life, like I can't change. I want to share something. When I was in college as a freshman, there was a guy he was just about 70 years old. and he was in his first semester in college.
Whoa.
And the reason why he was in college is because he was a truck driver his pretty much entire life, and he had a leg injury that basically forced him to retire. But he said, "Hey, I could retire now, or I could either go back to school and I can learn something new that I've always wanted to learn." And I think that's so incredibly powerful right there, because a lot of people think that they can't go backwards, or they assume that like doing something that people younger than them are doing is going backwards. And I think that it's such a mindset shift when you think of, hey, like everybody here is a student. Like, you are never going to have everything figured out. Like you were saying, you are never going to have everything you want in life at one moment. And if you do, it probably isn't going to last long. So you have to be okay with sometimes, taking a couple step backs, doing some things, learning some things different that maybe, other people might know that are younger than you. And I just encourage people to really think about that for a second. Is there any areas in your life that you've assumed like, hey, you can't go back to school, or hey, you can't go back to this job, or you can't go back to whatever it is? Is that true, or is that just you saying that?
Yeah, that's such a great point, man. I mean, I say it in my life too. It's like, it's parallel to the idea of being a beginner again, which is the same idea.
Yeah.
Like, be a beginner. Like, there's so many things that I've started doing, and I'm 37, in my 30s, that I didn't have experience doing before, and it's actually trying completely eradicated that silliness of being like, I'm too old, and also on the other side, I'm too young as well. Like, the logic applies both ways. But yeah, especially that so many people are averse to being a beginner, starting from zero, starting over. Like, the whole concept of starting over is a really powerful one, because our immediate inclination is that when we reach a point in our life where something happened that we have to start over, that means that we are as far as humanly possible from the thing that we want, because we had to start over, whether that's starting a new career, new relationship, whatever. To me, logic doesn't really support that. Like, if you started over, that means that the thing that you were doing before no longer serves you, wasn't right for you, wasn't the right relationship, was the wrong job, whatever. Whether it was a tough love or not, that's the reality. The fact that you're now starting over inherently has to mean that you're now closer to what you deserve, because you moved away from what wasn't right. So logically, to me, it has to mean that I'm moving in the right direction, not the wrong one. And so I think when you combine that with what you were just saying, with the idea of being a beginner again, it's just like, sometimes mindfulness is literally just like about like getting our nervous system on board logically, just moving ourselves that way. Starting over means you're getting closer to what you want, not further. Maybe just a little push, and that makes you want to take action. And if that helps, then you do it. And it's a snowball, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a super important mindset shifter there too, because when people hear the word or think that they're starting over, they don't recognize that everything they were just doing was experience. And like you were saying, now you get awareness if you actually take the time to understand maybe what didn't work out or what you didn't like in that moment. You actually now have indications for going into this time. Okay, here's what I know I don't like, or here's how I know that maybe something isn't working out. So every time you're starting over, you're not starting from zero. You're literally starting from experience, which actually, like you were saying, you're closer to the thing than you were before. So don't think of restarting or starting over as like you're starting from scratch, zero, like the thing was a failure. You're literally starting now with information and experience that can actually propel you in the direction you want to go in.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, I think like all these things that we're talking about, like a lot of these are just like social constructs that we've come to believe, that starting over is bad, that starting like this and that and the other. I have a chapter in the book about it's basically called it was a study about it was called a bullshit blind spot. The fact, and it flies in face of the line that you can't bullshit a bullshitter, is basically if you bullshit a lot, that is if you exaggerate, that is if you don't tell yourself the truth, if you tell other people half truths, if you tell yourself half truths, if you borrow other people's truths, you're more likely to fall for other people's bullshit. So it becomes this like very circular line of logic where if you're not honest with yourself, you get caught up in other people's dishonesty. Maybe it's them saying you can't start over. Maybe it's them love bombing you or gaslighting you or whatever it is. So, that's a more practical example of like, don't BS. You won't fall for other people's BS. But more so just in general, it's like, how can we develop more trust with ourselves such that what comes out of our mouth and the actions that follow are just honest and aligned? Certainly, it seems that it'll take care of the issue of being misled by other people and duped by other people, but maybe more so to help us keep in check some of these things that we're told to believe, but they can't be true, but we do believe them. So like, yeah, I hate to like simplify life, but self-awareness is a heck of a thing. And honesty, we can be self-aware, but not honest. There is a difference. Honesty that follows such that the things you do and the things you say are in line with what you actually feel, you're going to solve a lot of your problems. It might not always be comfortable. You might not have everything you want at once, but it'll give you clarity that I think people can take a lifetime to try to find. So just an anecdote there about beliefs and things we're told versus what we tell. I think there's power in just really defaulting to like radical honesty.
That's incredibly powerful. I want to shift here and be respectful of your time, but I want to ask you, there's a lot of people who want to write books, right? And they just don't know step one. When you have an idea for a book, like, is it just a spark that comes to you, or do you have a process that you follow when you're writing a book?
I would say the spark process, yes. But I mean, the key to I feel very strongly about this. The key to being an author is you don't just sit down and start writing a book. An author is a prolific writer, whether that's of quotes, of ideas, of bullets, of poetry. Like when I write a book, I'm pulling from other things I've already written. So it's very rarely, again, a starting from zero process. I am starting from the tens of thousands of words of other things that I've already written. Or if I haven't written them, I'm just storing them. So I think the key to being a good author is you're very easily inspired and you make note when you're inspired. I've got 2 Google Docs. One is 700 pages, the other one's like 400 pages. These are things that are just ideas that I've written down. That's in addition to the tens, hundreds of thousands, well over probably 500,000 pages that I've written of quotes, blog posts, podcast outlines, so that when I do have a spark, and I had a spark for this book, The Opposite of Settling, because I was like, I don't like the term settling down, and I certainly don't like the term settling. Let me think about some of the things that I've written over the past year that align with this. And I was like, oh yeah, this and that and this. And I just started putting it down, and all of a sudden I had 200 pages. So I think the key is, pull from where you've written before. If you've literally never written before, that's totally fine. Start writing. Start a blog post. Start a newsletter. Start a podcast and transcribe it. Get things down that you can draw from, and then just have a author mindset, which is you're inspired. You write in reaction to what you hear, what you read, and what you experience. And then just practically, you always make notes. You write things down a lot. I think that's the key.
I'm happy I asked you this, because a lot of people, like you said at the beginning, when they're thinking about writing a book, like it's just sitting down and writing a book.
No.
But a lot of people don't think about or even acknowledge the fact that what they've put out there, what they've said, what they've done in their life actually matters. And those are experiences that you can just literally, if you have an idea, write it down in a doc, because you never know if in like 6 months to a year, that little experience could be something that you could pull for a book. And I always tell people you're most qualified to serve the person you once were. So for anyone listening who thinks that they don't have anything interesting to say, or people who are like, nobody's going to want to read what I have to say, talk to the person that you were when you were younger, as if you were giving them guidance and advice on how to get through those things quicker, easier, and just actually be the person that you needed when you were younger.
Yeah.
And write down those things, because at some point in your life, you're going to get inspired to want to share to other people. And it's not just sitting down and here, you need everything right in this very moment to write down. You can go through, like Case just said, a doc where you have all these ideas and experiences that you can pull from.
That's really good too, because I think we probably do. People talk themselves out of it. Like, who am I to share?
Yeah.
Like, who am I to write a book? Why would anyone care? I can tell you for a fact that is just so untrue. Everyone has valuable life knowledge. People ask me all the time, like, Case, who do you look up to, or like, what great thinker do you look up to, or and up to? And of course, there's some people and like friends of mine, but overwhelmingly so, the answer I always give is like, what inspires me? I say Reddit, the website. Normal people who are just sharing things. They're just literally sharing things there. That is where I like my favorite quote ever came from an anonymous Reddit user who dropped this on the world and then dipped. It was like a thread about like a best life advice you would give. And this person, all they said was, the difference between a head full of memories and a head full of regret is your ability to forgive yourself. And I was like, oh my goodness, like such a clear, easy, simple, and it just like changed my life. And that person, I have no idea who that person is. Guarantee you they're not a New York Times bestselling author. They're a regular person. So to think that you don't have any wisdom is a disservice to you, and you should share whatever wisdom you have at the time you have it. And yeah, I think you'll thank yourself. And then I liked what you said, Joe, about how to kind of draw it out of you. I think that's a great, simple, relatable way.
Yeah, no, thank you. And what you just said about Reddit there too, that's applicable to so many different things because a lot of people, creators, influencers, they're looking for a lot of people will start with the idea like they'll have an idea and they'll think that it's like what everyone wants. But I always encourage people like Reddit's a really good place that you could actually go to find out if people are actually looking for what you're potentially going to offer. And that's a good way to kind of vet like, hey, like is what I'm doing in the world actually like something that other people need help with? And you can
Yeah.
kind of maybe switch around some stuff that you're doing
Yeah.
so that it actually.
I would say who knows now with AI, but like anytime I ever search something on Google, I type what I'm looking for and then I type Reddit because like Reddit's the center of the universe when it comes to like normal, more or less people. So
Yeah.
yeah, take it with a grain of salt. But yes,
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I just want to ask as well for all the listeners who are here right now, how can everyone best support you and get involved? Of course, get the new book, but also, is there any way that you want them specifically to go or any place that you want them to get involved with?
yeah. Well, thank you for having me, man. I think this was a great chat, and you've got a great mustache going on. So
Oh, thank you. I
kudos
appreciate
to
it.
you, my man. Yeah, I think the book, The Opposite of Selling, it'd mean a lot if you pre-ordered it and then ordered it when it came out. And then, yeah, I have a podcast, New Mindset Who Dis. It's on every streaming platform. And then the Instagram, case.kenny. Pretty much everything's there.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, man. Everything will be in the show notes too for all the listeners. So to scroll down, you can click all those links and you can click the link to get the book. Highly suggest, that we dove into like 1% about what's actually in the book, and I think it's a really invaluable resource for people to actually kind of revamp their mindset and kind of shift their view on love. And thank you again, Case, for your time and for your energy and for showing up here. Very much appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.